Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Board of Education. This meeting is being televised live on ACPS TV and streamed on ACPS YouTube channel. General information and protocols for the meeting are posted on the sign by the doorway as you enter the room, so please make sure you read those if you have not already. Please pause for the invocation. O God, we pray to administer that which is just in all educational policies, being ever mindful of your guidance. Stir us to action with love, wisdom, and understanding. Please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. That brings us to item 2.03, approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve minutes as written.
Second.
Do I have consensus? Item 2.04, establish agenda order. Do I have a motion?
Move to adopt the agenda as written.
Second.
Thank you. Do I have consensus? And before we move on, I just want to say that our colleague, Ms. Dent, is under the weather today, can't be with us, and we wish her a speedy recovery. So that moves us to item 2.05, recognition. Dr. Bedell.
All right. I think we'll have staff come up and let's get into it. We have a recognition and then, we'll do recognition and we'll go to 2.06.
Mm-hmm.
Good afternoon, President Tobin, Vice President Silkworth, members of the board, and Dr. Bedell. I am Jen Lombardi, Senior Manager for School and Family Partnerships, and today I have the honor of presenting today's recognition. Before I begin, would you mind please coming down and joining me up front? All set. This afternoon, we are excited to recognize a member of the AACPS family and a fierce advocate for wellness of the mind and body. She also happens to be the 2023-2024 Maryland State Teacher of the Year, Mary Kay Connerton. Ms. Connerton is a physical educator and a wellness coordinator at Annapolis High School, where she teaches wellness techniques to staff and students. Mary Kay has taught at the elementary, middle, high school, and collegiate levels. She has created our district's first yoga course in response to student needs in the Annapolis cluster. This course morphed into a holistic wellness program that she created, which assists students, staff, and the Annapolis community with living healthful lives. Alongside the incredible work that she does every day with AACPS students, she also facilitates events to connect employees and the community with wellness resources. Ms. Connerton co-leads a trauma team, wellness club, and a trauma-informed wellness groups, which focus on healing and connection. On top of all that, at the county level, she has been instrumental in the creation of a curriculum for Stretch Your Wellness that is available to all students throughout the school system. We are honored to acknowledge Ms. Connerton for all the wonderful work she has done for our students and staff. She is our Teacher of the Year, Maryland's Teacher of the Year, and who knows, perhaps in a few months, the National Teacher of the Year. As she comes forward, please join me in congratulating Miss Connerton for her incredible impact she has on so many lives. Okay, we're going to do a picture. If we could have the board members except for President Tobin up at the top.
Yeah. And Dr. Bedell.
And Dr. Bedell. Oh, here.
So I got the green one.
Oh, wow. Oh, my God. There
Should we scoot, we need to scoot this way?
Which way?
This way until Mary Kay is right back there. Jolynn, you might want to come on, should she come on my side or?
There's an even number. So
Okay.
A little bit more?
big Audrey.
Okay.
There you go.
That good?
Yeah. All right. We might have to switch some friends in the back.
But I am.
So get all the way down? You might have to. Sorry. Okay, and if you can lift your side of the board up just a little bit, and there we go, perfect. Oh, great. I'm gonna take a couple of big smiles.
Congratulations. This is theirs? That's
This
what I
was
thought.
this, right? Yeah.
Yep.
I'm having fun.
No, it'll be good though. People walk in and see it. It's really-
Something for your t-shirt. Something for the t-shirt. Can you show it?
For the what? Okay.
Can we see it?
Yes, yeah.
There you go.
Oh, wow, very nice.
Yay. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
An honor. Okay. Yeah, so I carry it back to you. Okay.
Okay. Go Panthers. All right. That takes us to item 2.06, Educator of the Month. Our November 2023 Educator of the Month has been a dedicated educator in Anne Arundel County Public Schools for over 20 years. She approaches every year like it is her first. In her classroom, she incorporates the most effective and innovative strategies that reach all students. Her teaching style and strategies are responsive to the students she teaches, from starting the day with a mindful moment and community circles to STEM-infused literacy activities. Learning is FUN in Ms. Norris's class. Sheila Norris implements the district's curriculum and programs with her own outstanding touch and is committed to helping her kindergarten colleagues at Hillsmere Elementary School as their team leader. She is a collaborator, mentor, and friend to many in the Hillsmere community. She is always looking to fine-tune her teaching craft and help all her students realize and reach their potential. A parent said this about Ms. Norris: "We are so grateful to have Ms. Norris in our lives. She never once presented our students' challenges as a problem, but as a way for them to spend more time together. He never once felt singled out or different. If anything, he felt very special." Ms. Norris volunteers her time to help plan and support the school's reading vision by actively participating in evening reading nights and school-wide incentives. She leads Lego Club to engage students and in after-school programs. Ms. Sheila Norris, your students, both current and former, feel lucky to have had you as their teacher. One parent said, Hillsmere is full of so many beloved teachers, but Ms. Norris has made impressions that will last deeply into the lives of her students. Today, the Board of Education is honored to recognize you as the Educator of the Month for November 2023. Thank you for being a wonderful asset to Anne Arundel County Public Schools. Congratulations, and would you please come forward to accept this recognition? All right, so we have this award. Oops. We have this citation. I'm going to give you this as well to keep. And we have a plaque for you. And before we take pictures, what did they tell you to get here, to get you here?
That I was coming to talk about how I use technology to engage early learners.
We should put that on the agenda. And who do you have here with you?
My husband, Lee, and my son, Connor, who is a sophomore at Broadneck High School. My wonderful principal, Kim Terry, and my fabulous teammates, Jen Escamilla and Lindsay Ellis.
All right.
Well, welcome everyone, and we're so glad you're here to support you, and thank you for everything you're doing at Hillsmere. Anything else you would like to say before we take a couple of pictures?
No, just thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, let's hold that up, and we'll hold this up. Congratulations. Have a wonderful weekend. Okay. 2 for 2 for the Annapolis cluster. So, just saying. Okay, item 2.07, Employee of the Month, Ms. Ellis.
Thank you. Speaking of technology, this next recognition came to the review committee with 4 pages worth of accolades written by the school's principal, a grade 1 teacher, a school counselor, and a behavior specialist from another school, all of whom said that this employee is deserving, wonderful, amazing, consistent, positive, and impactful. Rosa Ogle, learning lab technician at Manor View Elementary School. In an elementary school with no assistant principal, Ms. Ogle's position is vital to the continued safe environment and positive culture that Manor View strives for. She meets regularly with students, checks in on their progress, monitors cafeteria behaviors, and is the first to respond to any call on the walkie-talkie for support of a student. Her willingness to help other learning lab technicians benefit from her experience sets her apart. Ms. Ogle understands the demands of the position and is able to be empathetic to new learning lab technicians and help them learn strategies to successfully redirect students, diffuse tense situations, and respectfully communicate with staff, administration, and parents. She has taken on additional roles which enhance the school's culture. She started a school safety patrol program that had not been in place for more than 5 years. She also serves as the school safety committee chair, where she leads training for drills at the school. She is an active member of the PBIS committee and the Sunshine Committee. Her work ethics are beyond reproach and a role model for others. Ms. Ogle is consistently present, often beyond her contractual hours, to assist teachers, students, and parents. She does not hesitate to go beyond the call of duty. Rose Ogle, the Board of Education of Anne Arundel County Public Schools, and Manor View Elementary School are blessed to have you on their team. So for these reasons and many more, we recognize you as the November 2023 Employee of the Month. Congratulations. Please come forward. And shows what I know. I read your position with the school, and I thought it was technology based, and then I was like, oh no, it's all social, emotional, and something we really need. Good. Congratulations. So why do you think you're here today?
Oh, I,
Or why did you?
I think I was tricked.
Well done.
I was told I wasn't gonna have to speak also.
Oh. All right. Well, we won't put you under too much pressure. So I'm gonna I'll let you have the right up here, but let me present you with this certificate. And that's for you. And then you will get this. And that's awesome.
Thank
Come a little
you.
closer. There you go. Congratulations.
Are there any family members here or friends you want to recognize?
Well, my husband Bob's here. My daughter Caitlin is here. She's a 4th grade teacher.
Ah.
My wonderful principal and friend, Laura Espinoza. Jen Bennis, 1st grade teacher, PBIS leader. And Shannon Willie, our guidance counselor.
Oh, well, thank you, everyone. And you evidently are good liars, so I guess. So that brings us to item 2.08, Volunteer of the Month, Ms. Corkadell.
Thank you, Dr. Tobin. If Jackie Robinson was right when he said, "A life isn't significant except for its impact on other lives," then this month's Volunteer of the Month has a life of high significance because of the immense impact he has had on our school community. It is an honor and privilege to recognize this afternoon, Tony Caparosa as our November 2023 Volunteer of the Year. Edgewater Elementary School is incredibly fortunate to have Mr. Caparosa as a volunteer. His presence, his tireless efforts, and his warm personality have enriched our school beyond measure. From the moment he stepped foot into our hallways, Mr. Caparosa became an integral part of our Edgewater Elementary community and family, and his contributions have been nothing short of extraordinary. Mr. Caparosa dedicates his time, energy, and heart to our school each and every day. Whether it's during school hours, after school, or on weekends, you can always count on Mr. Caparosa to be there. He is a fixture at school functions, from assemblies to clubs, from field days to picnics, and even on field trips. His dedication to ensuring the success of every event is unparalleled. Year after year, Mr. Caparosa has organized and cooked for our staff breakfasts, contributed his time to after-school coding clubs, played a crucial role in the success of our book fairs. His dedication during the book fairs in particular stands out as he tirelessly works to make sure the event runs smoothly and helps students find their next favorite book. What's even more astounding is that Mr. Caparosa juggles his full-time job overnight and still finds the time and energy to be here for us and our family. His commitment to our students' well-being and education is truly commendable. In fact, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that Tony Caparosa is not just a volunteer, he is a cherished member of our Edgewater Elementary family. His dedication spans many years, and he has consistently demonstrated his willingness to help whenever and wherever needed. He stands at the front of all of our functions, greeting our community members with a warm smile, ensuring that everyone feels welcome and appreciated. His positive influence on our students, family, and staff cannot be overstated. Mr. Caparoso, Edgewater Elementary, and the entire Anne Arundel County Public Schools and greater community is blessed to have such a dedicated volunteer, and we thank you for your service. It is with great appreciation that I would like to present this Volunteer of the Month bell and certificate to you as a symbol of our appreciation. Can you please come forward? So tell us, what scheme brought you here this morning?
I was told that I was coming to try to figure out how to get more volunteers from the community to come forward.
Well, we definitely need that. So I think
I've been working on it in my head for like the better part of a month.
well, we still want those ideas.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And who I saw this entourage
I was
of
gonna say,
appreciation.
so-
If you could just share with us who is here.
My wife, Ann, who's a TA at Edgewater Elementary. My oldest daughter, Ella, who's in 7th grade at Central Middle. My younger daughter, Morgan, who's in 3rd grade at Edgewater as well. And pretty much all of the staff.
I know, I saw
From
it.
the elementary school, who, you know, when we volunteer there, when I try to go up and volunteer, it's just to help. You know, I feel like it's, I don't know, it's important. We've been connected with the school now between both daughters. We've been connected for 10 plus years, pretty much. And it's fun. You know, it's completely different than my regular full-time job. And it gives me an opportunity to feel like I give back and to help, you know.
Well, it's not just a feeling, it's reality.
Yeah.
And I think you serve as an inspiration.
Yeah.
Our Edgewater, as an Edgewater resident too,
Yeah.
our Edgewater community is tight and it's so wonderful
It is.
because of people like you. Thank you so very much.
Yeah, thank you.
I really appreciate it. Stuff and of course, when you need to call volunteers to come and help, there's a bell.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to take a brief 5-minute break to go out front and get pictures for those who have been recognized, and we'll be back shortly. Thank you.
Jaden, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Jaden. It's Mr. Silkworth.
everyone. This brings us to section 3, the public comments section on agenda items. So prior to beginning, I will read this statement. This is one of the opportunities that the board provides to hear the views and receive the advice of community members. The members of this board appreciate hearing from interested citizens. As appropriate, we will refer your concerns to the superintendent for follow-up by his staff. The board will hear public comment from up to 10 total speakers, a combination of virtual and in-person per agenda item, excluding personnel items, reports, and recognitions, during a single public comment section in the early portion of the meeting. The board will hear public comment from up to 10 total speakers on items not on the agenda, excluding any student-specific or personnel items near the end of the meeting. The link to register to comment before the board opened at 3 p.m. on the Friday prior to this meeting. Registration closed at noon on the Monday prior to this meeting. Speakers may sign up for no more than 2 agenda items, but only once on any individual agenda item. For any item with more than 10 registered speakers, the board will employ a lottery process to select the speakers. Registrants who secure a slot to speak were notified by email at the email address they provided when they registered. All speakers will be allotted 2 minutes and must address the specifics of the agenda item for which they sign up. No speaker substitutions will be permitted. If your name is called and you are not present, we will move on to the next speaker. For anyone who was not selected to speak at today's meeting, you may email your comments to the board office at boardoffice@aacps.org. While we encourage public input on policies, programs, and practices within the purview of this board and the school system, this is not the proper forum to address specific student or employee matters or to comment on matters that do not relate to public education in Anne Arundel County. We encourage everyone to utilize existing dispute resolution processes as appropriate. I remind everyone that any inappropriate personnel remarks or other behavior that disrupts or interferes with the conduct of this meeting are out of order. Persons using language that is threatening or promotes violence against members of this body or Anne Arundel County Public School employees are subject to legal penalties. Persons who otherwise disrupt or disturb this meeting will not be allowed to continue their remarks and will be asked to leave the meeting. It is not the board's general practice to engage in question and answer session with speakers. For the record, please give your name before speaking. Handouts should be given to the board assistant. I ask that speakers observe the 2-minute clock. A yellow light will shine when you have 30 seconds remaining, and a tone will sound when your time has expired. Please conclude your remarks when you hear the tone. If you continue after your time has expired, the microphone will be turned off. It could also be turned off if a speaker addresses specific student or employee matters or are commenting on matters not related to public education in Anne Arundel County. With that, we have one virtual speaker on item 5.01, new course approvals, and that will go
Good afternoon,
to...
ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the virtual public comment on agenda items this afternoon. We have one speaker speaking on item 5.01, new course approvals, Jaden Ferris. Jaden.
Thank you. For the record, Jaden Ferris. I'm a recent graduate of AACPS, and I support the AP African American Studies course. Though I must confess to a twinge of envy, as both this course and the LGBTQ+ studies course I proposed before this board in February of 2022 will be offered after my time in AACPS. However, that envy is eclipsed by my excitement for students to come who will benefit from courses that bridge gaps in our existing curriculum. Courses like this ensure that the stories and contributions of these groups are not relegated to the margins, but are celebrated as an integral part of our shared history. And though I am confident that the majority of this board will vote in favor of this course, I feel compelled to address those who desire to follow the path that the state of Florida did in January of 2022 by prohibiting this course. Let me be clear, any opposition to this course sends a damaging message to our students that their history, Their struggles and their contributions are not worthy of in-depth study and understanding. And in an era where knowledge is power, such a stance is not only regressive, but dangerous. Offering this course as an opportunity for AACPS set a powerful example by demonstrating that education is not about erasing uncomfortable truths, but about confronting them, understanding them, and learning from them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Conclude our virtual public comment on agenda items. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So that takes us to section 4, reports, and we will begin with item 4.01, policy committee report. Ms. Ellis.
Thank you. The policy committee met yesterday, and I forgot to pull up my report to get the policy number, but give me 1 second. Should have been more prepared. But yesterday we met and reviewed policy. Sorry about that. I cannot pull up. So we reviewed a policy on fund balance, overseeing fund balance and how we apply those funds. And so, I'm sorry that it is one of our items for today, I believe. Yes, school activity. Thank you. I'm sorry. School activity funds management, code DF. I apologize. Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. That one will be on the next agenda. I apologize for that. Yes, so the budget committee did approve moving that forward to the board for our next, the policy committee. And then we also reviewed the policy on LGBTQ plus support for students, and it was just a review. Staff had requested that the policy committee take a look at it. Nothing was changed. There was a slight change in the regulation, but that was just for the committee's review. My apologies. I had the report up on my computer and I lost it.
We've all been there. Thank you, Ms. Ellis.
Should have been more prepared.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to item 4.02, the president's report. So I would just like to note that Dr. Bedell and I were pleased to attend the Family Involvement Conference a week ago Saturday, which was a wonderful event. Thanks to Ms. Lombardi for putting it together. Thanks to incredible presenters for coming out, Dr. Bedell for giving a wonderful keynote, and the parents, most of all, the families who came out on a Saturday morning and partook of this wonderful opportunity. So we're delighted to see it back in person after COVID, and look forward to continued growth and expansion of what is a really fabulous opportunity for our families to see what's out there and get incredible resources and support. Thanks to Crofton High School for being the space where this was held, and I was delighted to be a part of it. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Mr. Silkworth for a couple of things he would like to note.
Thank you, President Tobin. So several weeks ago, I had the honor and the privilege to attend the 100th anniversary of Glen Burnie High School, which was absolutely fantastic. Well, little did I know at that time that on October the 26th, I would have the honor and privilege to attend the 300th anniversary of the Anne Arundel County Free School, which is located at 1298 Laval Drive in Davidsonville. Dr. Bedell and I and Mr. Pittman and many others were there for the unveiling of the new plaque commemorating, as I said, the 300-year anniversary. The Anne Arundel Free School is the only surviving schoolhouse that we believe of its kind in Maryland today. The history of this structure, which served as a schoolhouse for a young Johns Hopkins, it's closely entwined with the lives of Anne Arundel County families, as well as with the history of public education in Maryland. It serves as a free school museum today, and it is absolutely amazing. You can see original desks for students with original textbooks and so many other original artifacts, which were actually a part of the original school, which still stands today. This is an amazing part of Maryland history, which you should not miss. Find the time to visit the Free School Museum. Tours for school classes and other groups are available by appointment, and admission is free. You can contact the Anne Arundel Retired School Personnel Association because they are the caretakers of this great historic site. And also, I had the honor and the pleasure to attend as an announcer the Maryland Marching Band Association Regionals, which was held at Arundel High School on Saturday, October the 28th, from 12 o'clock to 9 p.m. MMBA is a marching band circuit for all Maryland bands, and it is run by Maryland bands. Anne Arundel was well represented by Old Mill, Savannah Park, Arundel, Broadneck, Chesapeake, and Crofton High Schools. I have to tell you, all of the marching bands were awesome, and there were over 30 marching bands there. Old Mill did take first place in 3A with Savannah Park coming in second, and Arundel third. Broadneck placed third in 4A, and Crofton placed fifth. Chesapeake placed third in the open small division. The talent that was displayed by every marching band was absolutely phenomenal. Congratulations to Ian J. Burns, who is a National Board Certified teacher and Arundel High School band director, for hosting this wonderful event. I'd like to quote Mr. Burns when he says, "A truly amazing amount of time is given to perfecting all of the details in these shows, and I am positive you will find these performances impressive. Please join me in celebrating their hard work, artistry, and musicianship. Regardless of the results, we will all leave winners," and I have to tell you, we all did. So thank you so much, President Tobin.
Thank you, Mr. Silkworth. Ms. Corkadell, I see your light.
I just wanted to say I regrettably was not able to attend the Free School's 300th anniversary, but I did have an opportunity a few years back to not just tour it and work with the staff there and the historians, but actually did a weekend review TV segment on it back when I co-hosted that show. But I just got to say that if you ever have an opportunity to visit it, it is definitely well worth it. And you never recognize it's right in the middle of a neighborhood, right? But what a fabulous neighborhood it is to host. And I mean, just the books on the shelves. And I mean, if you think about it, if you're into books and, bound original books, that is like a treasure trove for it. But to recognize the meager facilities that were being used to educate our students and now you see where we are today. I think it's also noteworthy of how blessed we are in modern society, but how we manage to still well educate our community through the years from such meager facilities. Thank you so much for attending, and congratulations to our community.
Thank you. That brings us to item 4.03, Superintendent's Report. Dr. Bedell.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to start off by thanking everyone who helped to put on our first county championship showcase 2 weekends ago at Annapolis High School. We had 12 championship contests in all. And for me, it was just an honor to, number one, look at the amount of staff that gave up their Saturdays to kind of help manage this, because we had folks from all around the county to descend upon Annapolis High School. Secondly, for me to have an opportunity, I've never watched field hockey. I think I'm more confused after watching that championship game on how they're supposed to only hit the ball on one side. And it takes a skill set. But what I also learned about the talent that we have, both at Broadneck and I believe the other school was Crofton, two of those students have already committed to play at University of Maryland College Park. So that's bona fide Division I talent that we have just off of those two, off of that program. And I just thought it was amazing. Additionally, I had an opportunity to watch the JV soccer championship game. I think it was Savannah Park versus Chesapeake, and I believe Chesapeake won that 2-1. So I know you're proud down there, Miss Frank. But what was probably the most eye-opening experience for me, and this really goes to this notion of creating a sense of belonging in this county and the power of what these programs can do to bring a community together, is what I saw when I went into the gym to look at the cheerleading competition. There were representatives in there from all around the county. And what I had observed as a team would come up and get ready to perform, the cheering from other students to encourage them and to wish them good luck, and then watching parents from all around the county cheering on students that did not live in their communities. And I had to record it because I'd never seen anything like this. Then I asked myself this question. Wow, this is amazing. It doesn't matter what your beliefs are. Doesn't matter what community you come from. It doesn't matter if you're conservative, moderate, Democrat. Everybody in there was cheering on students, and it didn't matter. And it made me think, why can't it be like that when we walk out of that gymnasium? Why can't we have this cohesiveness where there's this sense of creating a sense of belonging and acceptance, regardless of how you show up? If I saw it in there, and it's the first time I've seen anything like that, and it didn't matter if you were from Pasadena or if you were from North County, everybody showed love to the students in there. And I guess for me, that's ultimately where I want to get to. Leveraging extracurriculars, whether it's the arts, just as you've heard from Mr. Silkworth, or athletics, to really build that Anne Arundel County is one. Yes, we're going to compete against each other. We're going to throw down. But in the end, we know that we have teams that will advance on the states. How can we all be there as a unit? And I'll leave this from this piece. I took a picture at Broadneck High School on Sunday morning. I was there 7:30 in the morning shooting hoops because I got to stay alive by exercising to deal with stress. And in that gym, they had a sign up for every single high school. Now, I haven't seen that across the county. So I sent to Monique probably about 7:40. I said, I'm sorry for sending this to you this early, but why can't we have that? That shows the family structure that I think we should have in all of our schools, letting everybody, when they walk into any of our gym, they see the robust offerings that we have through these 13 high schools, and that in the end, we're all one, Anne Arundel County. So I'm just wanting you all to know what I saw that day gives me hope. It gives me a lot of hope around how we can continue to move together and evolve as a county through our social emotional programs that we have to help develop our students, but it also brings and hopefully creates a sense of community. So I just wanted to share that because it was eye-opening. On another note, next week, we will begin a pilot program with eligible bus riders in the Crofton cluster, through which we will employ bus badges that students will scan when they get on and off buses. The goal of this project is to examine the potential benefits of a system-wide initiative should we decide to implement and potentially expand it. Eligible bus riders will be provided with pre-printed cards and an accompanying lanyard by their schools in the coming days. Bus badges will be utilized on all buses that transport students between their homes and schools. Use of the bus badges is not required to get on or off a bus, and no student will be denied access if they forget or have misplaced their cards. It's important to understand that this program does not provide real-time data on school bus ridership, bus location, or things of that nature, and it is not an app that families can track daily. The data we get from this project, however, could lead to those things. So this is just another thing that we're beta testing. And if we believe that there's value, then we believe this is something that can be replicated across the clusters once we get our data. The next item is just around the work that we're doing with our strategic plan. We had our first steering committee meeting last week, and the second one is scheduled for later this month. The committee will meet a total of 7 times to begin shaping the plan, and then we'll get input from focus groups as we begin to fine tune it. More information will be posted on a website that is currently under construction. What's important now is that a community survey to get opinions and desires related to our school system is now online at www.aacps.org/strategic plan survey. It closes next week, so everyone please take time to complete it and share your voice on our plan. And as a parent in this school district, I also not only received it via email, I received it via text message. So we're using all modalities to try to make sure that we're getting some input from the community in this process. Lastly, I want to provide another update on vacancies. We continue to see improvement. As you look at our classroom teachers, we're hovering at 97 compared to 203 last year at this time. The alternative vehicle drivers at this juncture, we're looking at 4. I think it's important for people to understand we have 0 bus driver vacancies. So there are no bus driver vacancies. We have even better news is that we do have 49 drivers in training. So we are gradually building that bench. So as people call in, we have coverage so families don't have to make adjustments to their schedule in order to get their children to school. But as you can see, we're continuing to make progress in this space. And I think that as long as we continue to do the little things that are attractive to making people want to work in our county, we're going to be fine. Lastly, in conjunction with this piece around staffing, we recently are working with our communications department under the leadership of Bob Mosier to really highlight all of the awards. This is unprecedented. I shared this with you all at the last board meeting, the number of state award winners that we have and the number of national award winners. We got all of those people together. We've taken pictures, and we're going to be using that as a marketing and recruitment tool as to why people need to join Team AACPS. So, Madam President, that concludes the superintendent's remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Bedell. Mr. Silkworth, I see your light.
Yes, thank you, President Michelle. I just want to piggyback on what some of Dr. Bedell's comments. Cheerleading, of course, is dear to my heart. I was a cheerleader when I was in high school. So, yes. Glen Burnie, it's my understanding that Glen Burnie High School came in first this year, and it's amazing. It's their 100th year. Field hockey is a great sport. And so I'd like to also make sure that you know, Dr. Bedell, that North County, I believe they won the region last night 3-0 against Springbrook, the Blue Devils of Springbrook High School, and they're moving on in the state playoffs. So that's good. But more importantly, I would suggest to you, you talked about the love that you saw during that event. So when I was at Arundel, at the end of that competition, when you have 30 bands, there's a lot of judging that takes place, and that's a very serious thing, and it takes time. And so after all of the performances, there was an encore performance by Arundel, which was amazing. But after Arundel finished, I looked out at the stadium. Now, anybody that's been to Arundel Stadium, there are 2 sides. The other side was totally filled. All the bleachers were filled. The side that I was on with the press box was also filled. And the behavior amongst these kids, these students, was amazing. They were doing the wave. and they were so supportive of one another. And, you know, we hear so much sometimes about the negative things that happen, but I'm here to tell you, I had goosebumps as I was sitting there watching that wave. And I commented to some of the people in the booth with me. I was so very proud to be a part of that. And everybody needs to know we have great kids, whether they're in the band or in the field hockey or a cheerleader. They're doing absolutely superb and great things out there. And we're proud of them. And I know you are too.
Thank you. Ms. Corkadell, is that a new light or your old light?
Thank you, Dr. Tobin. It is a new one. Well, I just wanted to thank Dr. Bedell for giving an update on the Crofton pilot program. I know that the community is excited to be a part of that pilot. And we know that the pilot, I just want to reiterate a couple highlights for the community that, you know, the purpose of a pilot is to allow us to evaluate and make it a bigger determination. But as with every single piece of new technology, when it is launched, there is always that concern of data security and what is being done with the data in the forefront, the background, and that clarification. Because I think there's a misunderstanding too sometimes of our ownership of the student to and including on the bus, and then where that takes off and it becomes again the parent and the community's responsibility for the student. So as we work through there, I know that is probably the only of making sure. And I think it's almost ironic because this actually will help us ensure safety. Occasionally, and this goes back like 20 years ago when, well, not 20, maybe 15, when my student's bus had a mechanical failure. And the idea of, is my kid on that bus? It was an after school activity day and, you know, the panic of the parents. I think that is just one example of many of how we would be able to enhance our safety and experience for our kid and transportation experience, and then on to other opportunities, like you had said, making our food service more efficient and being able to ensure as we modernize with our and continue with that GPS portion, because our cameras are still going on with the buses. So that is more of a different function. But overall, I just want to thank you because I think it's going to well meet our needs. But I also know that continuing to have those conversations with those concerned will be important. And I know our staff is available, correct, for all of those, because those are very legitimate concerns. And I don't want to discount the excitement of a pilot program, but also recognize that the concerns are very valid. And unfortunately, society doesn't always operate like we would like to around students, but we're doing a great job. And that goes out to our transportation department too, and our new COO, Mr. Heiser. So thank you.
Thank you. And before we move on off this, I feel bound to just note that I believe there's a former Annapolis High hockey player sitting in the audience. So, yes, here from University of Maryland, actually. Yeah. So if you want a little more explanation, you can talk to her later. Okay, so that takes us on to section 5, presentations. Item 5.01, new course approvals. Dr. Bedell.
Thank you, Madam President. We have 2 new course approvals that we are recommending the board to take action on. And I think we will bring up staff. Nicole Howard will come up and present AP African American Studies and Apex Arts Theater 2, Prime 2 as courses we want to add to the course catalog.
Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Nicole Howard, and I serve as the Director of Curriculum and Assessments. Since today is the Countywide Professional Development Day for elementary and middle school teachers, our content coordinators and program leads are out delivering that professional development. So if you have questions at the end of the presentation, I'll be happy to answer them. In accordance with board policy for curriculum, today I'll present 2 courses for your approval. The main goal of AACPS is to ensure that every student belongs, grows in their learning, and meets or exceeds standards as achievement and excellent gaps are eliminated. Courses are designed to provide all AACPS students with rigorous, relevant, and inclusive opportunities that enable them to successfully navigate and positively impact the 21st century global society. For more than a decade, the AP program has worked alongside colleges, universities, and secondary schools to create an AP course in African American Studies. Drawing from the expertise and experience of college faculty and teachers across the country, the course is designed to offer high school students an evidence-based introduction to African American Studies. The interdisciplinary course reaches into a variety of fields: literature, the arts and humanities, political science, geography, history, and science, all to explore the vital contributions and experiences of African Americans. The Apex Arts Theater Prime 2 course is a year-long middle school course for our Apex Arts Magnet program. Last year, Apex Arts was excited to announce the launch of a new middle school theater Prime. This year, Apex Arts is offering the Level 2 course for students who have successfully completed Theater Prime 1. This Prime Level 2 course allows for Apex Arts students to more specifically prepare for the existing high school theater, theater design, and production primes. Inside the classroom, students will have the opportunity to uncover their many talents, passions, and interact with professionals from career fields in which they have interest. Our plan is for these courses to be available for students to enroll in for the 2024-2025 school year. With that goal in mind, our teams will be working hard to ensure that we put in place all that is necessary around curriculum writing and professional development for student success. So if you have any questions, you may ask them at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Shahan.
I just wanted to be on record and say that I fully support both of these courses, and I'm so happy to see that we're hopefully going to fully embrace the AP African American Studies course. I think that's a wonderful addition to our course selection. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no additional lights. Yes, did you recommend?
I'll do it again. The superintendent recommends approval of these courses as noted: AP African American Studies, Apex Arts Theater Prime 2.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I see no other lights. I will just note that it's striking to me that we are reviewing both of these courses, and particularly the African American Studies AP course right after Mr. Silkworth talked about the free school, the anniversary, because when that school first came into existence, African American students could not attend that school. And it's just worth noting that that is a part of our history. So, yeah, and women. Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Well, women could attend. However, and so we learned some things as we toured. Women could attend. However, girls were taught quilting and cooking. They were not taught the ABCs and the math.
Yep.
So
Yep.
all of the history isn't good,
Is there. Yep.
but it's important to know.
Okay, Ms. Money.
Mr. Lynn,
Aye.
Mr. Silkworth,
Aye.
Ms. Frank,
Aye.
Ms. Ellis,
Aye.
Ms. Schalheim,
Aye.
Dr. Tobin.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank
you,
you.
Ms. Howard, and thank you to the staff. That takes us to item 5.02, a presentation on the blueprint for Maryland's future. Dr. Bedell.
All right, we are excited to provide an update to the board and to the constituents of this school system on our work towards meeting the requirements of the blueprint for Maryland's future. I do want to say this before we have Matt Stansky and Dr. Shannon Pugh present, is that as a school district, we are fully committed to doing our full due diligence to implement this law. As I've said before, I think one could question some of the intellectual flaws that may exist within it, but the research behind it is phenomenal. And if we do this the right way, it's an opportunity to truly transform how we provide educational services to the students that we're responsible for serving, but to do it in a manner where it's a much more relevant model of teaching and learning. It removes us from some of the chalkboard era way of how we have traditionally taught students, who are now truly in a 21st century environment where information is at their hands at the snap of a finger. And so Anne Arundel County will be doing everything it can in its power to try to take advantage of the opportunities that this will provide for us around redesigning and doing transformational work that will benefit the children in this county. So we'll pass it over because I'm looking forward to some rich dialogue as a result of this presentation.
Thank you. Dr. Tobin, Dr. Bedell, for the record, I'm Dr. Shannon Pugh, the Director of Community and School-Based Programming, and I serve as the Blueprint Implementation Coordinator for Anne Arundel County.
Good afternoon, Matt Stansky, Chief Financial Officer.
We come to you today, I guess I should. Sorry, I have a faulty. There we go. We come to you today to provide an update related to Anne Arundel County's work related to the Blueprint for Maryland's Future. We will start with centering our work in college and career readiness and how different aspects of Blueprint support AACPS's CCR goal. Then Mr. Stansky will provide a deep dive into the concept of money following the student. We will be stopping between the CCR components and Mr. Stansky's presentation to allow for questions, and then questions, of course, when Mr. Stansky is finished. In Anne Arundel County Public Schools, our college and career readiness blueprint goal is that we will eliminate opportunity gaps and ensure all students, all AACPS students, graduate prepared for college, career, and community. Ultimately, we want our students to graduate with the knowledge and skills to create the world in which they want to live. Blueprint provides the strategies to provide structures and supports to help achieve this college and career readiness goal. These structures and supports include expanding access to pre-kindergarten, various college and career supports and pathways, high-quality teachers and leaders, and more resources for more students to be successful. We're going to start with expanding access to pre-kindergarten. This is the first strategy, and some will argue one of the most powerful ones, to help our students on their journey to becoming college and career ready. As this board is aware, Blueprint requires districts to expand pre-kindergarten experiences. The requirements include that by fiscal year 2026, all Tier 1 and Tier 2 students, 4-year-old students, must receive a seat in pre-kindergarten if their families want one. And by fiscal year 32, this also applies to Tier 1 and Tier 2 3-year-olds as well. AACPS has made significant progress towards these goals. In the current year, we are able to offer 2,360 seats to eligible pre-kindergarten students. We continue to lead the state in the creation of new pre-K 3-year-old classrooms. This year, due to more demand for eligible 3-year-old families in areas in the county where we had classroom space, we increased this number from 8 to 15. I do want to take just a second to to recognize and add a little bit more explanation for going from 105 classrooms for 4-year-olds to 103. So right now we have classroom spaces in certain places and we have demand in other places. And so when we were not able to, so in places where we had specifically 2 classrooms and we did not have enough demand for 4-year-old seats for the eligible students, we did have a pretty long waiting list for 3-year-olds. So we transitioned 2 of those classrooms into 3-year-old classrooms. So we will, of course, be requesting to continue to expand our pre-K opportunities and seats in the coming year. So under Blueprint, our classrooms go through actually 2 levels of, well, one's accreditation, one's certification. So our classrooms, for individual classrooms, incidentally, individual classrooms teachers, they have to go through 2 levels here. They start off with Maryland accreditation, and then they're able to continue once they receive that onto Excels. And so what you see on the screen is a little bit of a little bit out of date. Somebody whispered to me this morning that we did receive word that 3 more of our schools this week did officially achieve Excels, and so we'll be updating that information. But this is an extremely complex process. It takes a lot of work on the part of the teachers in the schools, so they are certainly to be commended for all their great work that they did to achieve both of those pieces. So Blueprint's aim is to support our youngest learners so that they are more likely to be ready for kindergarten. But the question is, are efforts for providing students from identified student groups more access to pre-kindergarten helping to remove opportunity gap barriers? At the beginning of each school year, teachers administer the kindergarten readiness assessment. The purpose of the assessment is to determine if students are ready to begin kindergarten curriculum, specifically to help the teacher determine what background knowledge, experiences, and skills students are entering with so that they can better support our young learners. AACPS, Maryland, and national data indicates that some student groups are more likely to demonstrate this readiness than others. From the data that we have so far for last year's kindergarten students, they just finished the KRA a couple weeks ago, so we don't have that data set back from MSDE. But what we can see from last year's kindergarten students who participated in a pre-kindergarten program the year before, 21-22, we see that 41.7% of our students who had an AACPS pre-K experience demonstrated kindergarten readiness, and that is compared to 16% or 8, sorry. I'm at the point that I can either see far away or see up close. And so just for that piece. And so we do see certainly an increase there. We do want to take a moment to highlight, though, the area where we have emerging students. And as we unpack that data, we continue to see the impact of chronic absenteeism on our students starting at the youngest grade levels. And we are currently working with Attendance Works on district-wide initiatives as well within different clusters and feeders. And we have learned, which makes sense, but our students who are chronically absent as pre-kindergarten students are chronically absent when they're kindergartners, are chronically absent when they're first graders, and continue and are most likely going to be chronically absent when they're in high school. So this remains an area and a priority of the superintendent of how are we going to address this. But we see this impact here with our youngest, 4-year-old children. When we do received our data, I'm sure we will be very interested, we will be very interested because this year's group of kindergartners is our first group who had both 3-year-old pre-K. We have a cohort of kids who had 3-year-old and 4-year-old. So we look forward to really kind of unpacking that data to see if we see any trends related to that. So very excited about those possibilities and continuing to build on those strengths. As we move forward, we want to share with you updates related to our students' enrollment in different CCR pathways, specifically the data related to increased participation in AP, IB, and dual enrollment. This school year, we are seeing increases in participation in all 3 of our traditional college pathways. As we look at our increased enrollment and advanced placement, we see an overall increase of 224 students, and those are unique students. Many of them take more than one AP course, that they are enrolled in AP courses this year. Of those, we have 173 more African American students enrolled in AP courses this year, and an additional 94 Hispanic students enrolled compared to last year. We are seeing a similar positive trend in our IB enrollment this year, with an additional 126 students participating in our IB program, of which 74 are African American students and 40 are Hispanic students. The most dramatic changes we see are related to comparing last year's fall enrollment to this year's fall enrollment at the community college. We see an increase in all student groups. We are especially excited to see a pretty substantial increase in the number, almost double there, of students who qualify for free and reduced price meals. This is especially important because we've always supported our students who qualify for this support with tuition assistance for the community college. But we feel that with Blueprint and the emphasis and energy behind some of these opportunities, that students are just more excited and are more likely to take advantage of the thought of having basically free opportunities at the community college. So we're very excited, and especially for that increase. But overall, we had an increase of 797 students participate, or who are currently participating in courses at the community college. We don't have the numbers yet for the spring, but we are expecting to maintain this trend, if not exceed it. As you know, apprenticeships are also a big part of the Blueprint for Maryland's Future. So as of today, we have 189 students participating in apprenticeships here in Anne Arundel County. That keeps us at number 1 in the state for the number of students that are participating. I have been assured that before the end of the year, we will be up to 200. So excited for those pieces. Out of curiosity, of our students, 153 are completing apprenticeships at NSA, 21 at the Coast Guard Yard, and 6 at Baltimore Washington Medical Center. We cannot meet our college and career readiness goals for our students without the incredible hard work of our amazing AACPS teachers and other staff. So recruiting and retaining high-quality teachers and leaders is a cornerstone of ensuring CCR readiness. As this board knows, Blueprint allows districts to encourage and support teachers to complete the rigorous National Board certification process. As of today, Anne Arundel County Public Schools has 317 active Unit 1 MBCTs, and there are those in other units as well that you can see on the screen. This number continues to keep AACPS as number 2. Sorry, Dr. Bedell, we're still number 2 in the state. But last year, we were number 11 in the country, but we are anxiously awaiting that final number to see where we rank with national numbers as well. As we work to increase that 317 number, we have a robust MBCT support structure that Dr. Kerwin himself in a meeting called out and recognized as outstanding. We can see the growth between the number of educators last year at this time to the number of educators in the process at this year of this time. MBCT can take between 1 and 5 years, so some of these individuals that we see in this year's numbers are continuing candidates. But we see that our work is inspiring more teachers to undertake this rigorous process. As part of our work related to the AACPS workforce diversity policy and through the support of the Office of Human Resources, last year we added an individual to the MBCT office using ESSER funds who devoted much of her time to recruiting more diverse teachers to participate in the process. We can see here that the work of the office is making an impact as we start to see more of our outstanding African American educators participate in the MBCT process. The office is committed to increasing the diversity of candidates across all educator demographics, and we hope to see these efforts continue to support all of our teachers in the MBCT process. Finally, the research related to Blueprint identifies that there are many challenges and barriers that prevent our students from achieving at their highest potential. Blueprint provides supports and funds to support our students most in need. Today, I would like to focus specifically on the supports in Blueprint to the physical, social, emotional supports for our students. This board has indulged me many times in the past as I have shared the great work that is occurring in our community schools. But what I haven't shared so far is how we are leveraging the concentration of poverty grants at these schools to increase the access that our students have related to physical and social emotional supports. So this year, we were able to use funds for 23 full-time nurses. In most of our elementary schools, our nurses are part-time, but not in our elementary community schools. We have 9 full-time social workers, 6 full-time psychologists. In addition, in 3 schools, grant funds support a full-time bilingual specialist, and those individuals' jobs are specifically trained by Mr. Vogelin's office to interpret for our Spanish-speaking students in counseling sessions. It allows them to speak in their primary language for those additional supports. So expanding access to these crucial positions to support our students is a commitment by our superintendent, and we are excited to continue to see this process. The Concentration of Poverty Grant allows additional supports for students at identified schools. Still, Blueprint also includes a program that is designed to support all students, regardless of school location, who needs behavioral health supports. The Maryland Consortium on Coordinated Community Supports is designed to support this need. This consortium recognizes that Maryland is a wealthy state with many resources, but the state and counties do not always have good structures to support students who are most in need. The consortium, which is in its very early stages, I think I need to stress that, it's in the initial planning stages. Through the consortium, each LEA serves as a hub that will be responsible for grant administration in the LEA. Outside agencies and organizations apply for grant funding from the state, but then from the consortium to provide needed sources. But then the LEA is the one who actually helps provides the support needed for those to occur. As part of the consortium work, each LEA identified their own priorities. In AACPS, we were able to choose priorities that align with the goals and priorities expressed by our superintendent in his post-entry plan. Ensuring the alignment between components of not only that plan, but also within Blueprint and the ongoing work of our strategic plan development is helping to ensure that we are leveraging all resources and supports to meet the needs of our students and their college and career readiness journey. CCR is not a standalone component of the Blueprint. Ensuring the alignment between components of the Blueprint will help ensure that all of the students in Anne Arundel County Public Schools are able to graduate prepared for college, career, and community. So we're going to take a little break at that because that was a lot before we get to Mr. Stansky. So we will certainly entertain any questions that anyone has.
All right, I'm looking for lights to see if anybody has anything. Okay, Ms. Schalheim.
I just want to thank you. It's an incredible presentation. It's a lot to digest. So I don't have a specific question. I just wanted to acknowledge the work that went into putting this all together for us, and I will continue to digest and process. But this is a very, very thorough update. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Schalheim.
Thank you, Mr. Silkworth.
Yes, thank you so much. It is a tremendous amount to digest. So it's my understanding the number of active BNCT candidates is 397. I thought I had heard 317, but then I had written down 397. And for me, I would like to know the number of our teachers who are currently looking for a master's or actually with a master's, because we know that all of our teachers are not able to become national board certified, but all of our teachers are able to pursue a master's degree. And so that would be interesting to know.
So I don't have that information available, but we
I-
can certainly get
I knew
that to you.
Okay. All right. I see no additional lights. So, Mr. Stansky, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Tobin, Dr. Bedell, members of the board. So we're going to transition now to another section of the blueprint that will have major implications on how our school district operates and school districts around the state operate moving forward. And is this provision in Pillar 5 and accountability around money following the student. And the premise behind it is essentially the state is looking for assurance that the money that certain students are generating are getting to the schools in which those students are educated. And so we'll talk through some of the larger scale policy implications for us, as well as some of the kind of nuts and bolts on how we're going to, attempt to implement and comply with the new requirements. So there are 9 funding sources that are subject to this requirement. I'll walk through each one of them briefly. So the per pupil funding is funding we get for every K through 12 student in the district. The comparable wage index is additional funding we get for being what we would deem a high cost jurisdiction. So jurisdictions that have higher cost of living, there's a recognition from the formulas that it's going to cost you more to do business, and hence there's additional resources that come with that. Compensatory education, this is funding we receive for students who qualify for free and reduced price meals. So that count is taken every fall, and funding is derived from that. English language learners, again, this is funding we receive for students who have been identified for English language learner services. Special education, this is again funding actually from ages 3 all the way to 21 that the district receives for students who have an IEP. Pre-kindergarten students, this is funding we get for our pre-K, which is obviously separate from the per pupil. But for right now, we only receive funding for Tier 1. We will begin to receive funding next fiscal year for Tiers 1 and Tier 2. Transitional supplemental instruction. This is funding the district receives for students who are struggling learners at the earliest grade level. 3rd grade MCAP scores are used to determine that funding by school, and it's then extrapolated through K through 2. This is a program, though, that is sunsetting over the next 2 years. And so that it is something to keep in mind as we begin budget discussions here in a month. College and career readiness. This is simply any student who's identified as college and career ready, the district gets funding for these students as well. And then finally, the concentration of poverty program. This is funding we receive again for schools that have high concentrations of students who qualify for free and reduced price meals. Dr. Pugh alluded to you earlier what some of our schools are using with that funding. So the law is pretty straightforward. I went too fast in that for 8 of these programs, it requires that the district show that it's spending at least 75% of dollars allocated for each one of these programs to the schools in which the students are enrolled. With one exception, the concentration of poverty, that threshold is actually 100%. And just so you have a good framework of fact, currently in our fiscal 24 budget, about 85% of our general fund budget and revenue falls into one of these 9 buckets. So we now only have about 15% of our budget that is sort of used as we see fit. And as the blueprint ramps up in the second part of the decade, that percentage is just only going to get smaller. So we're going to talk about how we used to get money, and then we'll talk about and how we are allowed to use it, and then we'll talk about what the new requirements are moving forward. So obviously, before Blueprint, there was another education reform legislation in Maryland. It was called the Bridge to Excellence Act. And again, this was an opportunity for the state and counties to infuse new money into school districts. But the big difference here is it allowed much greater flexibility for local boards of education, county governments to use the money as they saw fit for their district. And the accountability measure was really there on the outcome metrics for student achievement, right? So the working theory was, we'll give you these resources. You spend them how you see fit. You give us a plan on as to how you're going to spend them, how you're going to implement programs. But at the end of the day, we're going to hold you accountable based on student outcomes. So on the state side, we'd run 4 main formulas. They were all wealth equalized. We'll talk about wealth equalization in a minute. Obviously, high level, this is wealthy counties get less state money. Poorer counties get more state money. So that would come into the district. Then obviously from county resources, we would have the maintenance of effort law, right? And so the maintenance of effort calculation would be done. And then counties could determine to exceed that number or not. That would all also then come to the district, and it would all come into one big sort of pot of money to then be distributed through the budget process. And the state law outlined, we have 15 state categories that you're all very familiar with that we had to budget in. We would send our budget to the county. They would, either fund it or fund part of it. And ultimately the council would approve a budget based on 15 state categories. And then within that, the superintendent then had the authority to distribute or allocate resources to schools based on what we felt as district leaders, the best to meet the needs of students in LEAs. We would report to MSDE on how we've budgeted in these 15 state categories. And again, the accountability metrics were centered around the Bridge to Excellence plans with outcome measures for students. So the blueprint is taking a different approach and a different philosophy. Obviously, they're still going to hold us accountable to student outcomes, but there is more of a belief that there's going to be a new accountability around process, right? So the blueprint really says, hey, through our research, we believe there are certain things all districts should be doing, running certain programs, and if executed with fidelity, then the outcomes will essentially take care of themselves, right? And so now we're going to be charged with implementing all those. So the big change now is the state has gone from 4 formulas to 9. And the second big change is they're now requiring a local county match for each of the 9 programs. So done are we with the days of one big pot of money of county money. And now it is counties have to match each one of these 9 programs. And now school districts will now have to distribute each one of these 9 programs based on the rules outlined either in law or regulation to the schools in which these students who generated dollars attend. And we'll have reporting requirements for each one of these 9 programs, and schools and district leaders will have to manage to ensure that we are meeting the requirements of all 9. So it's not just one number per school, it will be 9 numbers per school. And so as you can imagine, this is a big structural change to how we do business. I will say on the county level, there's still the maintenance of effort requirement. So what will happen is we will add up the local shares of the 9 blueprint formulas. We'll also run that maintenance of effort calculation, and state law says whichever is greater, that's what ultimately the number the county has to provide at a minimum to the school districts. But at some point, as we phase this in, it is anticipated that maintenance of effort will go away, and that local share will just be the dominant calculation for school districts in Maryland. So we talked about wealth equalization, and I thought I can't take credit for this slide. This is my colleague in St. Mary's County, but this is a great example of what wealth equalization actually means. So there's been a lot of narrative around National Board Certified teachers, and that, quote, the state pays $10,000 for every National Board Certified teacher. That is not the case. The law requires that there's a $10,000 salary enhancement be paid to teachers who qualify, but that there's a state and local split. And you can see here from the 24 of us, it goes as low, the state pays as low as $2,000 for every teacher to as much as about $8,000 for every teacher, with the assumption or the requirement that the counties fill in the remaining gap. And so you can see for Anne Arundel County, we are considered the 6th wealthiest per the state formulas in Maryland. Those state formulas, you take your property tax base and your income tax base and you divide it by the number of students you serve, and it comes up with a per student wealth number compared against the state. So we are deemed the 6th wealthiest. So as you can see, For our national board program, we are only receiving roughly $3,500 per teacher that qualifies. So that means the expectation is the county government or the local school system is filling in that other gap of $6,500. So where are we with the timeline? So per state law, we are supposed to receive two things from MSDE. The first is a new reporting system. I'm happy to report that today we are beginning to test the new reporting system from MSDE. But the second is an updated financial reporting manual. This is the guide that all 24 of us use to ensure we're in compliance with all federal and state reporting requirements when it comes to K-12 finance. That manual has not been updated, so we are behind. We are anxiously awaiting and working very closely with our partners at the Accountability and Implementation Board, as well as the State Department, to get the manual and the rules up and running. And I'm going to talk more about the business rules here in a minute. So what that means is we're right now preparing budgets without the rules. So this is becoming a little bit of a challenge. But we're also, we're going to finalize our enrollment projections by the end of the calendar year. And we're going to begin to draft our allocation models to schools here in the winter. But we need these rules to really determine if we're complying with the law. But I think we have enough to know that we're going to have to make some changes to our allocation models to meet not only the spirit, but the legal intent of the law. And then obviously, like we do every spring, we're going to roll out budgets and staffing to schools based on that projected enrollment. And then obviously our first reporting requirement is July 1st, 2024, to ensure that our allocations, I'll say the word allocations, are compliant with the rule. There's both an allocation requirement and an expenditure requirement, and we'll talk about how those two are different here in a moment as well. So what are the challenges? School demographics, right? So we have a very diverse student population, and over 120 plus schools. That can lead to wide variations of funding, as we'll see here momentarily. Enrollment shifts and redistricting. So if we're in a situation where we're seeing massive shifts in enrollments, it's going to be difficult for districts to comply with this rule because the rule is always backward looking. What was your enrollment the prior year? Are you meeting the requirement? Well, let's just say, let's use West County Elementary as an example. They don't have any enrollment because they didn't have, so we're unclear how I can show that West County actually meets this requirement. So fortunately, there is a waiver provision in 5-234 for enrollment shifts. And so I anticipate us and the other 23 jurisdictions using that when needed. This will change our charter school funding formula. Currently, our charter school formula is expenditure driven. This will now be revenue driven. So the type of students that a charter school educates will dictate the funding levels they get from the district. So it's there. Business rules and guidelines. This is number one on the challenge for us. We need to establish unified rules in this state to ensure that the 24 of us are all establishing a baseline and complying in similar fashion. I think the biggest issue without the rules is it is difficult for us to establish where we are right now to see what changes we have to make moving forward. What qualifies as a compensatory education expense? What qualifies as a foundation expense? Those rules need to be fleshed out and fleshed out quickly so that we can establish a baseline to see where the shortfalls are and knowing that we can make certain adjustments. Distribution of staffing is going to be a key component to this, and how FTEs are allocated to various schools will be a thing that we're going to have to work through as a community. Reporting systems, there's obviously a new reporting system, like I said, that is just currently being tested. We'll obviously continue to work with our partners at MSDE to refine that, to make sure that it meets all the necessary requirements. This is, won't speak too much on this, but the workload on finance, IT, and HR staffs has already been tremendous and will continue to grow as these requirements take place. There was going to be some major changes in account number structures. We have already a multi-segmented account structure. We're looking to see if we can somehow make sure we're tracking all of this within our existing structure, or do we have to change it? So we'll have to take care on that. And we have obviously communicating with elected officials, parents, communities on these changes is also going to be key. All right, so what does this mean? What kind of variance can we see in a typical student? So you see in the chart in front of you, we have a profile of 3 different students, and you can see the vast funding levels that the blueprint requires for each 3. The first student is every student gets the K through 12 gets that foundation amount, and this is for fiscal 24, or the year we're in. So you get $8,642. Again, that's split between state and county, right? So that's not, the state's not giving us $8,642. They're only giving us about 35% of that number. Student B is one who has qualified for free and reduced price meals. So we're adding another $75.19 to that. So student B generates $16,161. And then you can see over at student C qualifies for all 3 sub-programs and gets the foundation amount. So student C actually generates $32,754. These are all at the 100% level. So again, a reminder that the requirement is that we show 75% of this money being allocated and spent at the schools that these students receive. But again, you see even at the 100% level, we're almost, a $24,000 difference between student C and student A. And that's intentional, right? That's the state indicating that because of the challenges that student C faces in learning, that the resources required to educate student C are greater than they are for student A. So what does this mean for schools? So we have, these are 2 sample schools, but this, I think, gives a great indication of what the intent, again, of the blueprint. And just level set everyone, these are, again, at the 100% level. So, obviously the rule is 75%. But you see you have 2 smaller elementary schools here, school A, school B. One has 443 students, one has 433 students. So school B has 10 fewer students than school A. But yet, because of the demographic makeup of school A as compared to school B, you see school A has a farms rate in the middle, you would say, of the range. Their ELL population is low. They generate $4.9 million, all those students together, for school A. Whereas school B, with 10 fewer students, because they have more students who qualify for farms, more students who qualify for EL, you can see the budget for school B almost doubles to $9.8 million. This is a big change, right? Now, I will say Anne Arundel County Public Schools has done a great job of differentiating staffing over the years, and this goes back to the business rules. We all have to have an understanding where our baseline is to then see what changes have to be made to ensure that both school B is getting what they need and school A are getting what they need, right? Because both students in those buildings deserve what they need, but this goes to the core of equity, right? This goes to the core of equity, meaning those who need it should have it. And this is ultimately what the blueprint is mandating, and what we're going to have to work to ensure that we're complying with. But what impacts what is actually spent, right? So when we're allocating FTEs and resources, we typically do it on an average, right? But again, we're going to use two examples here, school A and school B, with similar enrollment. In fact, school B is smaller. And so what the blueprint focuses on only when it comes to this, meeting this requirement, is spending. What the dollars spent. They do not care how many teachers are there. They're going to look at dollars spent. So when you see, what we're trying to show here is that the impact of teacher salaries, that the impact it can have on compliance with this requirement. As this board is well aware, we have a wide spread of pay for essentially for the same work, 3rd grade teacher. And so that can impact whether we are complying on a spending basis with the provisions or not. So you can see here, school B actually has fewer teachers, almost 3 fewer teachers. But yet, because of the demographic makeup of that workforce, the average salary is higher, and therefore you're actually spending more than school A, even though school A clearly has lower class sizes because they have 3 more teachers. But because of the, again, makeup of the workforce in school A, the spending is less per teacher, and therefore when we're reporting to the AIB on this, they're going to say, well, you're spending more money on school B than you are in school A, but yet school A actually has more teachers. So it's a fascinating look at how we define resources. It can be defined many different ways. And but for the blueprint compliance purpose, it is defined by dollars spent. All right, so communications, right? I think, we understand the why, but the how is going to be tough. And, it may, I've highlighted may here, may require some difficult decisions, right? Once we know the rules and understand our baseline, we can talk about that. But again, we've talked about wealth equalization. Anne Arundel County is a wealthy county compared to the state average. And so we're going to have to educate our county partners that it's just not one big pot of money anymore that can just go as we see fit. It's going to have to be, meet these blueprint requirements. I think in the future, we're going to have to look at program location. And one of the factors, I'm not saying the sole factor, but one of the factors is going to have to be, do program locations fit within the blueprint framework? And will it help or hurt us in meeting this specific requirement? We are clearly going to have differentiated staffing models. We already do now, but those differentiations are going to probably have to expand a little bit. And then obviously workforce deployment is going to have an impact on compliance. And so I think, as we continue the work in policy area 2, this is what's so fascinating. All of this is so integrated, and where we're, again, attempting to encourage our best and brightest to teach where they're needed the most and work where they're needed the most. I think this, this ties in well with what we saw on the previous slide, where, teacher salaries and spending will have an impact on compliance in this provision for sure. So with that, Dr. Tobin, I know it's a lot, but happy to do my best to answer any questions that you all might have.
Thank you, Mr. Stansky. There are lots of lights. I
I'm
hope I
sure
get
there
them
are.
in the appropriate order. So I believe Ms. Ellis was first.
Thank you. Thank you both for the presentation. Very thorough. I feel like I have a good understanding of where we're going. So I've always thought it made sense for dollars to follow the students, right? But Mr. Stansky, you pointed out the complication when there are enrollment shifts and redistricting. This is one of, I'm sure, countless examples over the next couple of years of what will probably be sort of unintended consequences. But so I'm going to ask you what I asked you recently before, which is this bringing to light some things we need to be working right now with our legislators on to clean some things up? Because if we have, we are going to open some new schools, and we are going to be doing redistricting, and that could create an imbalance of funding. So is there something we should be working on there?
I think with the waiver provision that's outlined in the law, that without knowing what the AIB would expect from a waiver provision, I think, but I know the intent was there because of it, and because the law specifically says because of enrollment shifts due to program location, redistricting, schools opening, schools closing, that districts can say, hey, for this group of schools, this provision doesn't work for this year, right? Because enrollment has fluctuated so much. But I do think it wouldn't hurt to just remind elected officials of some of the nitty gritty, right? I think somebody said earlier, the devil's always in the details, right? And again, from a policy framework, I think, right, the law is trying to force districts to have a larger, broader discussion around resource allocation, which luckily for us, we don't need the law to do that. Dr. Bedell has directed us to do that already, right, on our own. But when it comes to the actual, I'm losing 200 kids from this school and moving them to this school, how do I comply given that the requirements are prior year enrollments? I think there's just these like little nuanced challenges that as a finance group and working with state partners, we're still just struggling with and trying to make sure that because we all want to comply and we just want to make sure the rules are straight for everybody.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. And the slide was very helpful, showing the 3 different students and additional funds, I assume, are presumably spent on the categories that create that addition for that student, right? So, you listed compensatory education, English language learner, special education. So the extra $7,000 that goes to this student or whatever, the extra several $1,000s that goes to this student for special education is presumably being spent on special education, correct?
Right. Well, you're hitting one of our challenges, right? So of the 9 blueprint programs, I feel very comfortable with 5 of them because they're new and we've already set up structures to track. And so TSI, CCR, those we're feeling pretty good about. It is the legacy funding formulas that predate blueprint. It is foundation, compensatory, English language learners, and special ed. And I'm going to tell you why. Because for instance, in Anne Arundel, I'm going to use big round numbers. The blueprint generates about $85 million for special education students for us. We're spending about 180. So where am I to code the excess 100 million? It's got to come from somewhere. Can I use it in foundation? Can I use it if that special ed student also qualifies for compensatory education? Am I allowed to use it for that? Those are the questions we don't have answers to. And to your other point, yes, one could surmise compensatory education should be used for compensatory type activities, but they are not defined in the law. So the law only speaks to how you get the money. It does not speak to how you use the money. And so we are working diligently, and we would like, I'll just say, as much flexibility as possible for us to determine how to best use that money. But without rules, I can't tell you right now what that could be spent on. You could surmise certain things, and you have, and I think those make sense. But I think without concrete sort of guidance, we're sort of left wondering how to best move forward with that.
And just to piggyback on what you were saying, this is why I made that comment around a number of the intellectual flaws that come with this, where certain things haven't been thought all the way out, and there may have to be some pivoting and some amendments that need to be made in order for us to be able to properly implement this. And I think as we get deeper into this, we're going to find more and more of those. I mean, that's the same reason why I talked a lot about some of the legislation that's already on the books that counter the intent of this law. So if you want us to innovate, we can't operate under a constrained things that are in legislation that works against this. It's just a number of those type of intellectual flaws that I refer to.
Right. I get that because, if you overly constrain, you can't actually effectively meet the needs of the individual student. But again, I mean, ideally, having these additional funds in different categories is equity in action, right?
Absolutely.
So that the school that is receiving nearly twice the funding of another school does not mean this school is underfunded. It means they are receiving the education that they need. And so all those additional dollars at this school are going towards these services.
Correct. You're absolutely right. I mean, part of something I shared with the team earlier this morning around making sure that there is accountability around the type of support programs or the support staff that we're putting in to align with these resources so that we truly understand, are we getting a return on that investment? And we're not just throwing, solutions at this money that we received, and it's just kind of being thrown and hoping that we figure out what's the best road to take. And so I think that's part of the work that we're going to have to do from a program evaluation standpoint through our research and accountability division to make sure that whatever we're doing, the money is doing what it was intended to do, and that we can clearly pinpoint to this community that we're getting hopefully the results that this legislation was intended to provide with these additional resources.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. I believe Ms. Frank was next.
Awesome, thank you. I have a couple of questions. I'll start with some of the staffing questions that I had. It seems that there may be a disruption to teachers who may have been in schools for many years based on the allocation of staffing to meet the funding requirements, and the longer a teacher may have been there, the larger implication that would be. Do you foresee large shifts in staff allocation? Are we generally compliant, or do we have no idea at this point?
Again, I think it's hard for me to answer that without having a baseline. I think what I'll say is we'll see some FTE shifts, right? Meaning positions. What happens to people? I think that's a much larger conversation that I think all districts will end up eventually having. I don't see that initially taking place, but I think it will largely depend on what career ladder looks like and whether that career ladder incentivizes teachers to go to hard to staff schools. But it is one that we're going to have to grapple with over the next 3 to 5 years.
And just to, once again, I'll be doing a lot of this because part of what we're going to discuss as superintendents is some of the questions that you're bringing up. I'm happy that we are having this discussion today because we're in Ocean City the next couple of days where we will be spending a lot of time unpacking this. They've already asked several superintendents to talk about what these implications will look like in their system. And there are just some unknowns around how staffing would get moved around, but hopefully I'll have a better understanding of what other people are thinking. And as a result of the this conference that we're going to be doing over the next 2 days.
Yeah, I think I can feel confident saying this. I don't think the blueprint ever intended for Dr. Bedell to be transferring teachers to various schools. I think what it intended was, what they saw in the research was junior teachers are concentrated in high need schools. What strategies are you deploying to diversify the workforce in those schools to get more, not just all your new teachers concentrated in one or two schools, but you have a good diverse of experience, race and gender in all your buildings. And I think that's really the sort of 50,000 foot like policy intent. Again, though the implementation is the devil's in the details.
But Ms. Frank, I think we also have to just take into consideration, I'm just going to put back on my hat as a former principal. I don't want you on my campus if you don't want to be there. So part of, I think we have to be very careful and very intentional in how we go about doing this, because if people don't have a vested buy-in to being there, this is all going to work against us, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes the saying of, all money is not good money is true. And so you don't want to be in a situation where you're forcing people. But I think the intent of the law was to try to incentivize people that have these qualities and these qualifications to come into some of our schools where we really need board certified teachers. And I used this example not too long ago when we did a visit, I believe it was at Meade Middle School. And one of the teachers who's board certified is now a reading specialist. And she purposely went over there and is a phenomenal teacher and is doing what this law was intended to do. And that's what we're hoping we'll be able to do as we roll this out more and see those shifts, that it will entice people that this is a great opportunity for you to really help us try to, have that level playing field so that all of our kids are going to be successful. Because what really does traditionally happen in high poverty schools, you just simply have a bunch of your folks that are 1 to 3 years, and they also need those mentors. They need that experience in order to be able to grow. And I think that's the intent of this. But I can assure you, we don't want to be in a situation where we're having to force people to go, because ultimately they'll choose to either stay or leave the school district. So that's my assurance. We will look at that and everything that we do. And I think there will be a good share of people in this district when this is all rolled out. They see the strategic plan, they see the alignment, they understand where we're going. I think it will be some authentic buy-in to wanting to really help the system as a whole.
Okay, and then my next question is, when we looked at the school demographics funding slide, when we move to allocate resources to meet these new formulas, will we be removing funding from schools to be compliant?
Potentially. I can't speak to that for sure, but I don't want to take that off the table either.
So do we currently have schools that are overfunded?
Do we currently have schools that are overfunded? No.
So to be removing funding is not something that we would look to do unless legally mandated.
Correct.
Okay. In the name of equity. Thank you.
And Dr. Bedell, that was Bates Middle School where the reading specialist was.
Oh, okay. I knew it was a middle school.
The Annapolis cluster, just saying. Okay. Mr. Silkworth.
Thank you, President Tobin. This is transformational. This is also a game changer. And I had shared the same concerns as Ms. Frank about the teachers, the implications of the funds following the students and the impact that that'll have on teachers and staff at the school level. I think they're great. I would like to say that over the past couple of years, many of us on this board have asked the question, hey, how do you allocate resources? And the answer that we all wanted was, you send them where the needs are. That's what the blueprint is now requiring us to do. So the blueprint funds follows the students. When I read the presentation earlier, I just was thinking to myself, what a monstrous task, and how are we going to monitor the allocation of the funds, but also how might this impact all of our teachers? And that's already been raised. I think something that's critical is going to be the communication piece. We have to make sure that we communicate not only to our teachers, but to all of our stakeholders in this county, the impact that this is going to have. And I also assume that since we are going to have a redistricting vote, that the data for this, for the rollout in 24, will be based upon that vote. And the change of students.
So, right. So we will, this is why it's clunky, right?
Right.
So we will resource the schools based on their projected enrollment for next school year.
Right.
But the compliance is based on enrollment this school year. So, right. So Old Mill West High School doesn't have enrollment.
Correct.
So how do I get them to compliance? I can't. So that's where the waiver provision comes in. But yes, you're pointing out a little bit of the clunkiness of the law. Yeah.
Right. But thank you both so much.
Thank you, Ms. Schallheim.
Yes, thank you. That was indeed a lot. Couple questions. Going back to the nine tiers of the 9 formulas, you said that one of them was getting phased out. I believe it was transitional supplemental instruction.
Correct.
Is that being replaced with something else, or is this a holdover from the pandemic, what,
No.
describe what that is.
So this was a this is a recognition that there are many struggling learners early in the career of a school, right? Specifically K through 3.
Yeah.
There was a working theory amongst commissioners, going back to the Kerwin Commission now, that there's an over-identification of special education, and that part of the reason there's an over-identification is because there's really a cohort of students that are just struggling learners that don't have a disability. They're just struggling learners, and that districts traditionally just, issued an IEP. Whereas between expanding pre-K and then putting in this program, which essentially mandates 4-to-1 tutoring, K through 3, that's what it is, you would reduce the need for special education services, thus saving money, and that over time, because of the pre-K expansion, the TSI program would be less needed. And then there's also increase in your foundation funding as well in the out years that then once you have the career ladder in place, I'm probably really diving into Dr. Pugh's area now. The 60-40 split around the career ladder and the structure of the school day, your general ed teachers are freed up to do the TSI work that is still needed. And so that funding, in theory, wasn't needed. I will say all of this was thought out pre-COVID.
Right.
So, so we are where we are with the law, and that was sort of the working theory, and I'm sure Dr. Pugh could add to that if she needed to.
To your piece, so and just to add on to what Mr. Stancy said, that does transition to a different funding. It transitions to additional funding to support the restructure of schools, for additional teachers, or supports for planning time. So to what Mr. Stancy said, we are going to get another stream of funding that isn't necessarily identified for this specific purpose, but it's identified to really increase the number of adults in a building. And so in theory, when we have more adults in a building, we can then divide up their time. And so teachers would be able to support not only our youngest learners, but any of our learners in a very similar fashion. We have a really, really big chart. It goes on.
Yeah, sure.
But that is one where this goes away and that one starts. So
wow. Okay. And in terms of, I thought I heard one of my colleagues ask this. I'm just trying to make sure I understood the answer. In terms of identifying unintended consequences and cleanup and suggestions of how to, we're partners with the state. They have to partner with us. They're not in the school system. We are. They're not the experts. You are. So will there be a push to say, this works, this doesn't, please help in terms of legislative changes this coming year?
Yeah, I mean, I think we will work through PZAM and MABE, who have traditionally led the charge on all blueprint related strategy and changes. And so I know Ms. Wilson is in communication with those organizations. I, through my channels in the finance officers, communicate with both organizations as well as from challenges. I'll just say, at least now, the AIB will take direct feedback from us, right? Like they're always open to taking direct feedback. So that's, it's been a good working relationship that we've had. And I know Dr. Pugh and her network of implementation coordinators also there's a constant feedback loop, not only with PZAM and MABE, but with the AIB as well, and MSD.
Good. Because, as transformational as this is, it can't be in stone. It has to be real flexible, like all of this stuff, because it's not been done before. And just getting our legs under us, I think ultimately it'll be worth the forming, storming, and norming that we're doing now around it, for the benefit of all of our kids. I was a proponent of this legislation when it came out. I still am. But all the details and all the what ifs and all that is now coming up to work through. So, and then lastly, I thought I heard you say that we have to follow rules, but we haven't been issued rules yet, correct?
Yeah. So like I said,
Sweet, that's awesome.
we're feeling very comfortable. There's 5 programs up here: pre-K, transit, TSI, college career readiness, concentration of poverty. That the rules are pretty laid out in the law, right?
Right.
Here's how you get the money. Here's how you spend the money.
Yeah.
And so to my earlier point, where the how you spend the money is not as clear is in those legacy programs that we had pre-blueprint: foundation, compensatory education, English learners, and to a smaller extent, special education. Special education is typically pretty straightforward. The issue there is all 24 of us are spending way more money in that program than we're getting. And so it's got to come another one of those programs up there. So the question is, how will MSD and the AIB handle that? What guidance is there if you're overspending a program, right? There's federal implications on special education spending. Like essentially the minute you spend $1 on that program, it's spent forever. And so there is no reallocation opportunities in special education unless you're reducing the number of IEPs you have in your district. So there is no opportunity to move that money around. So it's got to come from somewhere. I think that's why there is that 75-25, at least, philosophically, why it's there. The question is, will the rules allow us the flexibility to move that excess funding to other places and not be penalized, right? I think I failed to mention that the penalty here is state withholding of money.
Yeah.
Right? Like if we're not complying or they don't feel like we're showing, they meaning the IB, showing a good faith effort to comply, the law's clear as what the repercussion is,
Right.
which is withholding of state revenue.
Wow. Yeah. So I hope that they get the rules to us, or push out the deadlines.
Yeah,
for these things.
I can say again, they're partnering with us to work through those business rules. Yes, we're late, but
we're late because we don't know what we're meant to comply to. So that's
right.
That's
and so we are, like I said, we're partnering with them and hoping to get these out sooner rather than later, so that we can then establish a baseline.
Sure.
So then I can better answer the question of, are we going to have to move resources from one school to another?
For sure.
Right. I purposely said possibly because I just don't know.
Yeah. Well, in either event, I'm grateful to both of you, your staffs, just for putting this together. This is an incredible amount of information. I don't have any other questions right now, though I'm sure I will once the rules come out. I'd love some follow-up about, with that. I'm sure we all would. So anyway, thank you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. And Ms. Corkadell.
Thank you, Dr. Tobin. My questions, I think the most important, I do want to note that this duplicative reporting thing, I'll be curious to see at the end, after they develop the rules and everything else, of how many additional FTEs we're having to take on as a district in order to comply and all that duplicity. So hopefully we'll be making some inroads on that. But I wanted to discuss the non-community schools, the schools that don't meet the mustard to get the additional funding, but have a proportionate amount of children with needs. And our rural zip codes, I think, are the most vulnerable to this. And as the representative of the largest swatch of it, I do feel compelled to flesh out just a little bit. If I'm understanding this, there's a quantitative value to it. Yet the students, in order to get those wraparound services, it sounds like we're going to run out of resources before we get to, in order to, support all of them right away. So is there discussion of the state either modifying the criteria by which they would be giving us some funding to match, or when we get into there, like, in other words, what percentage of those needs that we should already be addressing, of course, is going to need that local only. In other words, we're going to be on our own from a percentage. So when I look at like Lothian, Tracy's, Edgewater in particular, those three in my district, for example, it doesn't look like they're qualifying or ever would qualify because of the way the population comes in, not because there's not a large quantity of need, nor, and they do have a large concentration of poverty, yet it is not being reflected in the farm reports and some of the others. So is there going to be some readdress or as to the state providing those types of funding, or are we really going to have to work just with local dollars on that?
So,
because I was a little unclear of how, I see the chart of what, I'm not talking about the spend more money on my school than this one
Yeah.
because you spend it over here. No, because the number of students quantitatively don't
Right.
exist for that argument. But are we going to be out on a local limb, so to speak, for those schools because they're not in that category?
Yeah. So I'll start and I'll let Dr. Pugh
Yeah.
supplement anything
Because that's where I know my community's really, really concerned that we're left behind again.
Yeah, so-
We always get the
Yep,
brand.
there's
Yeah.
to receive the community school funding, there's one metric that qualifies you, and it's the free and reduced price meals, and the number's 55%. So in order to get that state and for Anne Arundel County local dollars for that program, the school has to hit the 55% mark. I have not heard, and Dr. Pugh, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I've not heard any discussion about using a different metric or lowering that metric. That's the metric that's in the law for the moment. I do think this kind of blends into Miss Ellis's question earlier, though, about what can you use compensatory education money for? What can you use English language learner money for? Do social emotional wraparound services qualify in those categories? I would argue yes. But again, I think we need clarity around that. But so that would be a potential for these. We have, those, I don't know, tier 2 schools, probably not the right word, but we have the concentration of poverty schools, which are mostly going to also be our Title I schools too, right? So they're going to get the federal support on instruction, and then they'll get the wraparound service support around the community school dollars. But then we have those schools that you're talking about, right? That just don't meet those qualifications that are mandated per federal and state law. But what can we do, and what can the blueprint do to support? And I think some of it is what flexibility is there in the compensatory and English language learner dollars to support. And then I've flipped back to, I think this is what the idea of the consortium was kind of alluding to as well, which is, here's this statewide program that can meet the needs of all students that need it. And then I think finally, if you were to talk to our mental health teams, both here at AACPS and in the county, that student need is also still going to play a role, right? Like, it cannot just be numbers on a spreadsheet that dictates what students in schools get. There has to be some nuance and some understanding of our communities that also say, hey, School X, while not meeting any of the requirements for special programs or additional funding, there's still a need here for some sort of after-school program or additional psychological services, what have you, and that it's then incumbent upon us to dig deep and try to find available resources. And yes, Ms. Corcadell, that's probably locally, right? To say, okay, here's a group of schools that aren't quite meeting the threshold, but we've still identified that need, and it's incumbent upon us to meet that need where it's at. And so it's a challenge. I'm not gonna sugarcoat that. There's only so much money to go around, but I think you bring up a great point, and it challenges us as an administration to ensure that those schools and students are left behind. And Dr. Pugh, if you want to add anything to that.
Sure, just a little bit is the number 55% is a 3-year average. And unfortunately, we're still in the calculation where the weird year where everyone qualified is in there. So we had a very low return rate on that without any promises whatsoever. At least one of those schools that you mentioned, I get pretty much a daily update from that principal of where they are. I spend a lot of time talking to her about the possibilities for, whatever that number ended up with yesterday. I also think one of the things about community schools, hopefully with the consortium as well, is there are a lot of really great community partners who have come forward, and in many cases, they want to support a community school that might already have a lot of other support. And so we are able to start trying to connect those partners with some other schools that I call in the middle. They're the ones in the middle. They might end up with there are some schools that I look and I'm like, oh, they're only going to have a 52% rate, but we know that there are some opportunities there. So in my office and other offices, when those opportunities come up, we do try to connect them. Even though it's not always a perfect match, and especially when you're talking about geographic people or geography, people want to assist in certain areas. But there is certainly a lot of energy and buzz around South County, specifically 2 of the schools that you mentioned right there. So no promises, but they are certainly heavy on my heart. Mr. Stansky is probably tired of me asking for certain, we got buses to one of those for some after school programs through generosity over here for a school that's not a community school. So my office worked really hard to try to get those opportunities for one of those schools for after school programming this fall. So not a perfect answer, not the answer you probably want right now, but I think what this is doing, though, is bringing to light the needs that exist in all types of places. And hopefully we can be very creative in some of that compensatory education in the future to maybe address some of the things that we're most concerned about in some of our rural communities. I grew up in a rural community. I understand. I understand that there's a lot of need and not a whole lot of resources. So.
Correct. And, to that point, some of it is a culture of tradition because of a quantity.
Yeah.
So we're the last ones to get fixed on the bus routes because it doesn't affect as many students, but it does affect as many communities. And it affects when you look at the percentage of the schools, of that school population and community that affects, it is much greater when the data is looked upon more than just that straight. But it is likewise to there. I know our community Hope is also working on some of those transportation issues because this goes beyond the pale of education to those core needs of food and clothing and shelter. Because honestly, as people are struggling to find affordable housing, they will be seeking the more rural areas because they are by definition more affordable. And that's why you see the big red and oranges sitting down in my counties, not because we are a broken community, but because we are a community of more moderate living. But that is almost like a penalty to our students who end up on a desert. That's the community hopes terminology for it, not mine. But you end up sitting on a desert amidst rural from food to other. So it sounds like we've got a lot of work on that because I suspect our other neighboring districts are likewise similarly struggling with that, unless they have absolutes. Like Prince George's, they've got a big rural set that I'm sure they're looking at similar data when you look at the things. But as we move forward, I will be curious to see what kind of creative ways we can better engage those communities. Because quite frankly, part of the challenge that I run into is that, when 80% of our opportunities for feedback and participation are based on here at Riva Road and north. Well, here at Riva Road is a 35 to 40 minute drive for some of my communities. And then the rest of it going to the north when we do our listening and learnings for strategic planning, for blueprint and for feedback Their ability to well interact with us as a board and with staff is further limiting, I think, a reflective and well represented voice. So I guess it's kind of like an ask as we move forward with that. It would be beneficial, I think, and go a long way because we're not going to be able to solve all of it. But I think if a person knows and has that investment and the community feels connected with the transformation and with the transition, that when you have to say no, it's an informed no, and the recipient's informed about the why. Because too often we don't get that, and they don't have an opportunity because of the transportation desert piece to even attempt to participate with us. And we as a board have not solved that in our public hearings, whether it's from budget to redistricting and the like. I mean, when we're dealing with our rural areas, there's just barriers that we have not looked into. And I think as we're trying to implement this, we need to visit them and create a priority for them. But I know you guys are on that. But I think it's important publicly to, as we're starting, as we delve in. And then, so thank you very much for that. And we're all working together as a community down in South County, and we're fully aware of our limitations, of course. But understanding where they are is important. And my last thing is how well we are coordinating with the county as it relates to affordable housing initiatives. We're going through a redistricting that we're getting ready to finalize, and there's another one coming down the pike. And I keep seeing PUDs and, percentages of allocations and such that is going to create perhaps deeper concentrations or areas that are already concentrated and overwhelmed and increasing them. We know that smart development planning kind of says that, presuming you actually have a transportation system to support the why you do that. Otherwise, you're almost forcing people into a zip code as opposed to them having the opportunities to well diversify all of our communities in our county and forcing that. And so we're looking at numbers that could very well be affecting. And with that ongoing delay, I would be curious as to how much the county has us at the table right now as it relates to the where and the how much per building. Because I'm watching the one go up just down the road from us. You can almost see the crane from here, from our campus. And there's going to be more. And that's not a bad thing. Watch Apple's an example of it where they used it. And it was something that the developer wanted to do, not a mandate and requirement, of course, at the time, and piloted and demonstrated we can do it well. So I'm wondering, how coordinated are we? Because every time I pick up the newspaper and read about it, it's not that I don't want the affordable housing. We desperately need that. I mean, even my professional private business, our association advocates for that officially with ACAR and such. But the where, and is it all going to be in a couple places? Seems like it could end up throwing some of this off. But I'm wondering if we should be advocating for having a stronger voice and saying some of those things, especially with that 100% APF change.
Yeah, I mean, Ms. Corkadell, I could just say that I think our participation in housing development and locations has been limited to the APF law, and the planning department here has a open line with planning and zoning, but as far as on the front end of plan approvals and zoning regulations, I don't know or think that we've had a seat at the table for those discussions.
That's unfortunate because I know we used to back several GDPs ago and in smart growth, and when they developed the impact fees districts and such, that we did have an opportunity to speak on the front end, not what it looks like on the back end. So maybe we can get a little improvement and encouragement from leadership on that. Thank you so very much. But those are the things I know I'm just going to say that I'll be looking at as we proceed forward. A lot of this other stuff and the roles, that's going to be what it is. But Mr. Sansky, I also want to thank you for all the additional work you're doing, and same with you, Ms. Hughes, because the state looks to us for our leadership and some of the innovations that are coming from Dr. Bedell's desk and how we are working as a team. I will say that despite all of the challenges, the new opportunity we have for us as a state in Maryland is that we have well demonstrated the ability to bring everybody together as a team, to get on the same page, and to start to actually advocate as a team with that level of credibility of data, with the effectiveness of targeting where we need it the most. And the fact that you wouldn't get us, weeks on end to get a simple data point that maybe half the districts would respond to. We're now within a matter of like 3 days, I heard, is the going rate for some of the data exchanges to pull it together. And yes, there's coordination with MACO, with PAZAM, with MABE to actually offer solutions. I wish we had more school board members and staff participate in that survey, but we're now down to the solutions. And so if you have a solution, you got to put it on the table now, because yes, those amendments and stuff will be coming down the pike, and our participation is going to be based on our efforts, not just the staff now. Now it's time for the elected officials to actually roll up their sleeves, make sure they are informed enough to be an expert in what they are speaking to at any moment in time. And it's now or never, because it is going to be reformed, either with us or without. So I hope our community is able to come out too and advocate for them and their services. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. A couple of quick questions. So just so I have this right on the chart that talked about the percentage of state money that goes to, say, the NBCT, am I correct that Howard County gets more than we do?
That's correct.
And that is because Howard County is not as wealthy as we are. Is that correct?
In the calculation, correct.
In the
So yeah, I think it's so important to note that so it's wealth per student. So it's your property tax base, your income tax base divided by the number of students you serve. Given our tax base, I think the wealth formulas assume we are going to be educating more students than we do.
Mhm.
Because obviously we know we have a pretty expansive network of private schools in Anne Arundel County.
Mhm.
And so we are not educating as many students as the formulas would contemplate.
Would project.
Would
right.
project. And so that makes us wealthier versus Howard, who does not have that expansive network. So their denominator is higher, and hence therefore making them quote unquote less wealthy than Anne Arundel County. So it's kind of one of those unique, and I think it's again important to note, I try to do this every time we talk about this, it's not what the actual rate of the tax is, it's your ability as a county to pay. So it does not take into account that our tax rates are lower than everybody else's as well. It just says, hey, here's your base, here's the number of students you're serving, you have the capacity to do X, so we're only going to give you Y. And so, yes, according to those calculations, Howard County is less wealthy than Anne Arundel County.
Well, it's an interesting cycle because the perception is, many people move to Howard County for the school system, right? And people move here for the school system too, but it has long had that reputation. And so it's an interesting outcome of putting a lot of emphasis on your school system in a county, that there's an odd sort of payoff here. But anyway, so I also wanted to go back to a couple of points that were raised, but also in reference to what I think is my understanding of the sort of 50,000 foot policy aim of legislation like this. I mean, a lot of emphasis here is on the early years, right? It's my understanding that that's really one of the major shifts of Blueprint, is to really put that money up front, so to speak. And that's the pre-K 3 and pre-K 4 and the just the supports that are there to ensure that children get a good start. And, you know, the reason for that is that will set children up for success better. But there's also a fiscal aspect of that too, which is, you know, as we talk about these allocations and the money that is going into the allocations, and by the way, those allocations aren't everything, right? We still have to keep doing all the things that we're doing. So, you know, that's part of it too. But the implication of this down the road is you're not spending money on a juvenile facility, right? And the return on investment, making sure you've got pre-K 3 and pre-K 4, in my opinion, and I think in the opinions of the legislators and the researchers, is way more than when you spend money on the back end.
Correct.
And so I think it's worth noting that what is rolled into a lot of these costs is what's not being paid later. And I just think it's worth noting that you're going to pay somewhere. The idea that there aren't costs to preparing children to compete in this world. We're not living in a world of the free school. We're not living in a one-room schoolhouse where what they needed were slates and, you know, memorization. We're living in a different world. And so those costs are real. And this is all benchmarked on the successful international systems that have prepared students well to live a life. And so, you know, that's the hard part of the finances, is to also think about what you're not going to be spending, assuming everything's done and monitored the way it should be. And, you know, I think that was Ms. Ellis's point too, that, you know, these allocations, when you see quote unquote more money go for a student, it's because that's where that money will be spent. And so, you know, I know that's not something that necessarily gets rolled into the numbers you present to us. They can't be, but that is part of the structure, it seems to
I do
me.
want to say that I'm really glad you said that, because I've received some feedback on this presentation from others, and the why can get lost, like why we're doing this.
Yeah.
In my attempt to be transparent as to what has to happen for us to do this,
Sure.
the why can get lost. I've tried as I've given this presentation more and more to circle back to the why we're doing it, because that's vitally important. But I'm glad you brought that up, because I think all of the struggle and the, you know, talk of rules and how we do X, Y, and Z is all for this sort of greater purpose, which is getting resources to where they're needed the most. But I also think that we have to be honest with people on what we have to do to get there.
Yep.
And so I'm just glad you made that comment, because I think at times this presentation, that message can get lost. So thank you.
And if I can just add a little bit on that. So as Blueprint implementation coordinators, we are trying to be a little bit more deliberate about, I don't know if you noticed, but in the past I would go pillar 1, pillar 2, pillar 3. And then we talked about, by the time you get to pillar 3, people are asleep, right?
Yeah.
And but that's really the center of it, is that college career readiness to all those pieces. And I recently shared with the Blueprint implementation group, the coordinators, is for something that has nothing to do with this job, with something else. I spent a week in Belgium the beginning of October, and I had the opportunity to spend a day with basically their Office of Education. And I came back and I said, and Rachel Heiss was very excited because I was like, okay, this is hard, but I was just in a place where they have 2 and 3-year-olds in buildings with the idea of that structured piece and support from the very beginning. Moving forward, everything is aligned. I was with teachers as they had these incredible structures and parts of their day that they were able to do these amazing things. And I was like, I need to remember that, not because that's necessarily the perfect system that we want to create, but it's just, this is what this started as. Let's look at international systems, other systems in the United States, wherever they happen to be, and ask, why haven't reforms worked in the United States before? And what is so powerful about what the Kerwin Commission did is they then, as they heard, oh, you can't do that in the United States because you can't do that, it all came down to structures. And so I think that is what is so incredibly challenging, is we are talking about change on a level that is astronomical. Even looking at some of the changes, sometimes like, oh, I did that. Was I bad for kids when I did that? I mean, so it really is kind of challenging our core beliefs of who we are as educators, no matter where we are. But thank you for coming back to that. I think we've been trying to do a little bit of cheerleading and rah-rah as we get into the devils in the details. And this is going to be expensive, but to not do this, we are also setting up our economy for not having the graduates that we need in order to do amazing things in the 21st century. So they are able to really create these worlds that they're going to thrive in. They're going to have the families that they want and how they can support them. And ultimately, I'm a social studies person. It's all about civic life. It's all about ultimately I can help create the community that I want to be a part of and all of that. And it comes down to rethinking education that we have not been brave enough to do because of all this. Ooh, we can't change that because we've done it since 1928. And I'm not exaggerating. There are things that we do that are left over from that piece. So thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you for giving me a second to do
Well, I appreciate it. And like my colleagues, I appreciate the work both of you have done. And I'll just say there was a terrific story in the local paper, I think Monday, about the pilot program at Arundel, getting I believe it was the dental assistance program. It's a pilot, and that is thanks to Blueprint.
Yeah.
And I think those are things that, give us a glimmer of what is possible here. So thank you both for your extraordinary work. We know that you are both considered the people around the state that people look to. That's a great benefit for all of us here at AACPS, but I know that doesn't come without a huge amount of work, and we appreciate it. So thank you very much. Okay, so that brings us to section 6, consent items. We've lost Ms. Schalheim, so.
Motion to bundle.
Is there a second? Second. Okay, is there consensus on bundling? Okay.
All right, Madam President, the superintendent recommends that the Board of Education authorize the award of contracts 6.01 and 6.02. Yeah.
Okay. I see your light, Ms. Frank.
Yes, thank you. We talk about devil in the details. This is actually one detail that I wanted to point out that I think is actually a really great addition. There have been some lighting concerns at Northeast. I have brought them up, and Dr. Bedell has noticed them, and it's been an ongoing conversation between a couple of folks. So I'm really thrilled to see it on today's agenda. I want to thank you, Dr. Bedell, for getting this done relatively quickly. The last conversation we had wasn't that long ago, so I thank you.
Appreciate you conducting those visits with me, so it helps to rev up the urgency. And thank you to Bill, Kyle, your team, because yes, it's just a little depressing with the lighting in there. So I can't wait to see what it looks like when this is finished.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate everybody on your team who's helped to get this here very fast. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So I think we need a motion.
Motion to approve.
And a second.
Second.
Okay. So Ms. Money?
Mr. Lynn,
Aye.
Mr. Silkworth,
Aye.
Ms. Frank,
Aye.
Ms. Ellis,
Aye.
Ms. Corkadell,
Aye.
Dr. Tobin.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Okay, thank you. That takes us to section 7, action items. Item 7.01, administrative personnel appointments. Dr. Bedell?
Thank you, Madam President. The superintendent recommends that the personnel listed on the attached sheet be promoted and/or appointed as discussed in executive closed.
Second.
Okay. Ms. Frank, was that a new light? That was your old light, right? Oh, I just turned it off, but okay. Okay. So seeing no lights, Ms. Money?
Mr. Lynn,
Aye.
Mr. Silkworth,
Aye.
Ms. Frank,
Aye.
Ms. Ellis,
Aye.
Ms. Corkadell,
Aye.
Dr. Tobin.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. Item 7.02, personnel. Dr. Bedell?
Madam President, the superintendent recommends that the board approve the actions as stipulated on the attached sheets.
Second.
Okay, seeing no lights, Ms. Money?
Mr. Lynn,
Aye.
Mr. Silkworth,
Aye.
Ms. Frank,
Aye.
Ms. Ellis,
Aye.
Ms. Corkadell,
Aye.
Dr. Tobin.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. Item 7.03, policy revision, second reading, school activities fund management, code DF.
All right, thank you. We will have Grace Wilson, who will present, I believe, it's just the second reading for this policy to the board and the community.
Good afternoon, President Tobin, Vice President Silkworth, members of the board, and Dr. Bedell. I'm Grace Wilson, Legislative and Policy Specialist. Policy DF, School Activity Funds Management, is before you this afternoon on second reading after being posted for a 30-day public comment period. There were no comments received during the public comment period. As a reminder, this policy was last revised in December of 2011 and is being revised to remove the requirement that the board's internal audit staff audit the financial records of all schools every 24 months and to update style and formatting. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Just glad to hear that there's no apparent concerns with the policy. I'm really looking forward to passing this policy, and my apologies earlier for the hiccups. I've got the screen right in front of me. I could not find it. Anyway.
Technical difficulties.
Yeah. Yeah, technology is running my life right now. So anyway, thank you very much.
Of course.
Okay, seeing no additional lights.
Okay, this
that's
will
it.
be back on third reading on November 15th. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Okay, item 7.04, Old Mill Middle North schematic design.
Madam President, the superintendent recommends approval of the Old Mill Middle School North schematic design.
So moved.
Okay. Seeing no lights, Ms. Money?
Mr. Lynn,
Aye.
Mr. Silkworth,
Aye.
Ms. Frank,
Aye.
Ms. Ellis,
Aye.
Ms. Corkadell,
Aye.
Ms. Schallheim,
Aye.
Dr. Tobin.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. Item 7.05, Old Middle High schematic design.
Thank you, Madam President. The superintendent recommends approval of the Old Mill High School schematic design.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Ms. Ellis?
Thank you. I just can't help but take the opportunity to express my excitement for the continued improvement of this complex. It's going to be a real win for our students. Thank you.
Yes, it is exciting to read these. Let's see what's on the horizon. Okay, seeing no additional lights, Ms. Money?
Mr. Lynn,
Aye.
Mr. Silkworth,
Aye.
Ms. Frank,
Aye.
Ms. Ellis,
Aye.
Ms. Corkadell,
Aye.
Ms. Schallheim,
Aye.
Dr. Tobin.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Item 7.06, New Village Academy Charter School Contract.
Thank you, Madam President. The superintendent recommends approval of the charter school agreement with the New Village Academy Public Charter High School Governing Board.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Seeing no additional lights, Ms. Money?
Mr. Lynn,
Aye.
Mr. Silkworth,
Aye.
Ms. Frank,
Aye.
Ms. Ellis,
Aye.
Ms. Corkadell,
Aye.
Ms. Schallheim,
Aye.
Dr. Tobin.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. Okay, this brings us to review items 8.01, award of contracts. Are there any additional questions? We have, okay, so this brings us to public comments on non-agenda items. The statement I read previously will stand, and I will call our speaker, Ms. Abby Ellicott.
Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Dr. Abby Ellicott. I am a mom and a psychologist and a citizen of the county. I'm here to talk today about the issue of inclusion and belonging in our schools for all students, particularly as it concerns religion and sexual and gender identities. There was some comment and discussion about this last summer in board meetings when we heard the proposed flag policy, and I came away from that meeting rather alarmed. And so I processed my feelings as a psychologist. I'm good at that. And I decided I would come back here and say a little bit further of my thoughts and reactions to that topic. In some of those meetings, there was testimony and also assertions from Board of Ed reps that schools should exclude symbols that represent LGBTQ plus youth because they might be offensive or cause discomfort to people from specific religious groups. We all know that some religions argue that being LGBTQ is sinful and evil. And our right to religious freedom is incredibly important. Students must have the right to believe whatever they choose in terms of religion. I believe they must have the right to pray, to read religious texts, and to discuss religion in school. However, I do not think religion should ever be used to exclude or marginalize LGBTQ folks in our educational spaces. And so because of that, I do not want to see, is my time over? Oh my goodness. Well, you heard my basic opinion. Thank you very much and appreciate all the work you're doing.
Thank you, Dr. Ellicott. All right. I would entertain a
Dr.
motion.
Tobin?
Yes.
Could we ask the person testifying to perhaps or suggest that they submit the writ since we did not have a chance
Yes.
to hear the whole?
Certainly, we always are happy to take your written comments so we can see them in full.
I will do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Corcado. So that brings us to a motion to adjourn.
So
Is there
moved.
one?
So moved.
Is there a second? Okay, then. Good afternoon, everyone. Have a great day.